Hello and welcome to this new episode of the UNDP SDG Local Solutions on SDGs. First of all, in this webinar, we have interpretation. So if you need to follow any other language, please select your channel in the little world that you have in the bottom of your screens that says interpretation. I'm Diana Lopez. I'm the advisor on cities and local governments here at UNDP headquarters in New York. We are very happy to count today with the experiences of Miami-Dade and Sevilla City to speak about how they are dealing with urban heat, with the warming that we are experiencing globally in all places of the planet. And to do so, we have today with us our colleague Cale Roberts from ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. He's the Deputy Director of ICLEI in the United States. And we have two wonderful speakers that we are really looking to hear from. The first one will be Jane Gilbert, who is the Heat Officer and Director of Urban and Community Forestry for the Miami-Dade County Office of Resilience in the United States. And we also have with us Eladio Romero Gonzalez, who is the Environmental Coordinator in the Sevilla City Council in Spain. Just a bit of logistics. We are going to record this webinar and make it accessible in YouTube once we finalize with the discussion today. And to encourage all of you participants following at this moment to use the chat to introduce yourselves, make any comments, make questions to our speakers. So our moderator will be looking at the chat to bring these questions to both the speakers. So without further ado, Cale, the session is yours, and thank you very much to all for being with us today.
Well, Diane, thank you. Thank you to UNDP for having me. My name is Cale Roberts. I'm a Deputy Director here at ICLEI, United States. Just north of New York City, where heat hit close to home, as I know it does for nearly anyone tuning in. It'll be no surprise to the audience here today that despite the term global warming, heat is a local issue. And local governments are on the front lines in a world that's experiencing heat waves that happen frequently and last longer when those heat waves do occur. So I'll tell you a little story from experience about data that has real impacts. At ICLEI, I work with dozens and actually hundreds of communities in the United States and have completed several climate vulnerability assessments with my neighbors in the New York area. And the data for heat in particular as a climate hazard in New York shows that within the next 25, 30 years, we will experience or are projected to experience heat waves so frequently that they essentially blend together into 3 or more months heat wave at a time. So we're talking about entire seasons of high heat here in a pretty, temperate region of the world. But in everywhere, heat is a serious health risk, causing more deaths each year than floods, wildfires, and hurricanes combined. It worsens chronic health conditions such as heart disease and diabetes, increases anxiety and depression for those who are in heat wave, and it exponentially impacts the most vulnerable in our communities, including the elderly, children, people with disabilities, and more. Partner is a high school teacher down the road in New York City. Some of our schools in this area are beautiful 150-year-old stone buildings built of solid granite. They kind of look like castles along the Hudson River. But the buildings, along with all the homes around us, never built to have air conditioning. Much of the Northeast United States is like this. Now today, these schools are baking in the sun, and students on the top floor of the schools are routinely fainting during class. So you can imagine what it would be like to try to learn in an environment. We need relief from heat, and we need examples from cities that are delivering those solutions, which is why I'm really happy to be here today with our amazing panelists who, from redesigning how builds can increase airflow, maybe even allowing us to avoid air conditioning, to installing water features and clean the urban core from the inside out. These cities and regions like Sevilla and Miami-Dade County are pioneering these reducing solutions. So with that, I am moderate a conversation, and we will begin with Jane in Miami-Dade County. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Kale. It is an honor to be here. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you all today and share a little bit about what we've been doing to address the increasing health risks and economic burdens associated with extreme heat in Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has known heat for a long time. We're a subtropical climate. Many people felt like we knew how to handle heat. But in 2020, when a group of community-based organizations asked people living in our most vulnerable communities in low to moderate income communities what their top concerns were related to climate change. And it was not sea level rise, even though we're internationally known for that risk. It wasn't even hurricane risk, and we just had a hurricane pass mostly to the north of us last night, but it was extreme heat, because that was the risk they're living day in and day out, the top, whether it was they couldn't afford their utility bill anymore, or their kids couldn't play outside in the summer anymore, or they worked outside. We have over 300,000 people who work outside every day. Life was becoming more manageable. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit more about what we discovered about how people are experiencing extreme heat, how we developed our extreme heat action plan, and talk a little bit about the progress in the implementation of that plan. So we have now 77 more days with the temperature over 90 degrees. That's 32.2 degrees Celsius, essentially another degree Celsius higher than we did on average in 50 years. We also were going to see, as Kale mentioned in New York, dramatic increases in dangerously high heat days. So we've had a historical average of 7 degrees with a temperature of 105 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a heat index. We have very high humidity here in Miami. It's a little different than Sevilla that way. We have very high humidity. But even this past summer, we've had over 60 days. And this is a heat index in Celsius of 40.5, which is a key number in Eladio's presentation too, of dangerously high heat days over 2 months with that temperature at least 2 hours. And it's getting hotter not only because of global warming, but because of how we develop as cities. More asphalt, concrete, more impervious surfaces, less vegetation, less trees, waste heat from our buildings and our vehicles. All of this contributes to making cities up to 10, 12 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius hotter than other neighborhoods. And it's not distributed equally. Tree canopy is a very good indication of where our urban heat islands are. And here, the white boxes on the left are our lowest area median income neighborhoods, and the white boxes on the right are areas of lowest tree canopy, and you can see how much they correlate. And of course, we have the compound risk. And as I mentioned, we just had a hurricane come through the state that if we had widespread power outages during a high heat time, that would be a very high risk. And we lost 12 people during Hurricane Irma in 2017 due to that very fact. We did a study looking at where and what types of populations were most at risk. We looked at the heat related, so heat exhaustion, heat stroke, emergency department visits, and hospitalizations by zip code, and what the top correlating factors were. And the top were low-income people and high daytime surface temperatures. In other words, our urban heat islands, and high percentage of outdoor workers. And we map that. And the disparity is not just in the order of 20, 30, 40, or 50%. It is that these zip codes had rates 4 times the rates of other zip codes in the lighter yellow and lighter orange areas of showing up in the emergency department because of heat exhaustion. So it was big disparity. We knew that creating this, the county can't do it alone. We needed our healthcare partners, National Weather Service, our nonprofit partners, our private sector partners, and citizens actually experiencing it. So we created a plan that involved all these partners in actions to address extreme heat, and really wanted to learn from people on the ground, both what were the challenges they were facing, but also what solutions we could create together. And we created this extreme heat action plan. The 3 main goals are to inform and prepare people, to help people stay cool at home affordably, and make sure we have the backup power, the energy redundancy in areas to keep people cool in the event of widespread power outages. And then goal 3 is to do all that urban heat island mitigation to cool down our neighborhoods. Kale mentioned that we're seeing now whole seasons of extreme heat. And so we actually declared May 1st through October 31st an official heat season. Our cooling sites are open every day during that time. We're messaging about drinking water, taking rest breaks, shade to various populations, and doing actual trainings to help people be their first responder, to community-based volunteers, to summer camp providers, to healthcare practitioners, to people doing outreach, direct outreach to people experiencing homelessness, to our staff at our cooling sites. We want to make sure that a wide swath of people have the training to know the signs of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, heat cramps, and then what to do and how to respond, and have that equipment on hand. We worked with the National Weather Service in updating our thresholds and response protocols, and have done a lot of outreach to employers and employees about heat safety protections. We wanted to make sure everyone under the county's care had access to low-cost cooling, and installed 1,700 efficient AC units in our public housing. We've increased funding for low-income single-family and multifamily housing to do weatherization of their homes and install efficient AC systems. We've done a lot of education outreach as part of our heat season campaign to help people know how to get their homes ready, stay cool affordably at home, and require all new county buildings to have cool roofs, be highly efficient, be solar ready, including any affordable housing multifamily that the county is financing. And we require any new building in the county to have a cool roof. We've also, on the urban heat island mitigation, dramatically increased funding for tree planting, and doubled the number of trees we're planting every year from 8,000 to 16,000, focusing down on those areas with low canopy, high poverty rates. And we're partnering with the school district and faith-based organizations to also plant in their yards. We've created a whole urban forestry plan that I'm in the process of finalizing after a lot of public feedback, and really focusing also on our walkable, transit-oriented right-of-ways to make sure that our bus stops have shade. We've had a number of incidences where people were waiting at a bus stop too long and ended up in the emergency department because of that. And so we need to not only make sure our right-of-ways are thermally comfortable, but thermally safe. And that is a critical piece. So with that, I thank you. I look forward to the dialogue. I look forward to Eladio's question, and I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Jane, thank you. Who outlined a wide variety, actually, of different measures that Miami-Dade County is taking. I understand that Eladio has a for you, so I won't delay. I have many of my own. I know the audience. I do want to remind everyone there'll be a chance at the very end call today to ask audience questions. But for now, let's turn to Eladio.
Hi, good morning. Well, good afternoon from Spain. It's a pleasure being here with all of you. Thank you very much for the invitation. And well, I will start with a question that the ones that we work in this, we are very, very worried about, especially in Europe, which is, it has been mentioned, I have the task given by the County of Sevilla to try to fight against the climate change here in Sevilla. And through the network, a Spanish network of cities for the climate that has more than 370 towns and villages which are represented and participate in this, we are all trying to carry out different measures. So my question is, usually we have to face a problem, which is the problem with the rules and legislations. Many times we do not have regulation or regulatory tools that allow us to intervene. So I don't know, Jane, how's the panorama over there, the scenario? I don't know if in your county, if you have legal tools that make you possible to participate, and also financial tools to be able to tackle all of these actions that are so necessary and that are so amazing, the ones that you shared with us. Or maybe you are encountering some legislative or legal limitations and also financial limitations. I don't know.
It's an excellent question, Eladio. There are tools in our toolbox that are policies that we have started, and there are challenges, both. And any policy change, as you know, takes time. It takes building constituent support in order for elected leaders to support it. So one is the building code is regulated at the state level, not at the county level. But we knew we wanted to make sure we had a cool roof ordinance requiring all new buildings to have highly reflective roofs, because that brings down not only the AC costs in a building, but reduces urban heat island, and even it's been shown to reduce global warming, contribute towards reducing it. So, but that required us to recommend an amendment to the state level and see that through. That process took a good year and a half, 2 years, to get it through. And it was only for our climate zone. We are currently looking to update our landscape code to require a higher degree of planting on both single family and higher density sites, and more strategic planting, more native and shade trees, and make sure that there is an adequate amount of shade for our right-of-ways through these private developments. We'll see how that one goes. That is in its process. We did just successfully pass an ordinance to require, so we have different than Sevilla, high amounts of rain that needs to be managed. And also, so pervious surfaces have the double benefit of managing stormwater, cleaning stormwater, as well as offering cooling impacts. We did just successfully, with a lot of stakeholder engagement and many meetings, pass an ordinance to increase the amount of pervious surfaces required on all private properties and managing drainage on site, et cetera. So these processes, we have tools in our toolbox. Our commission tried to pass an ordinance to protect outdoor workers last year. And before it got passed, our state preempted any local governments from being able to do so. So those are some of the challenges we have. In terms of funding, we are lucky that our current federal administration has been very supportive of climate resilient investments, and we received a $10 million grant to increase our tree planting in the right of way over the next 5 years. And there are other funding that the weatherization increases were also in part funded by federal government in addition to the county commitments. Going forward, we are looking to raise money through a general obligation bond for some of these investments as well. It will cost money to adapt, and we will need to make sure we're communicating the benefits, the multiple benefits of these investments over the costs. And we know that creating a walkable, bikeable, well-shaded, transit-oriented community is what we all want to live in, but and would offer so many co-benefits, but it's going to take creating that case for it, economic case, I think.
Thank you, Jane. I already see in the chat people will have more questions for you. We'll bring those at the end of the call. Eladio, thank you for that question. And now let's turn to you. Tell us about the situation in Sevilla.
Thank you very much once again. So I hope you are seeing the presentation. Okay, so I wanted to call my presentation that Sevilla is still facing climate change because, as Kale was saying, in Sevilla, we've been for centuries trying to adapt to climate change. The history of architecture in Sevilla, it's full of examples for this adaptation. We are talking about centuries ago already, but the problem, as we are going to see, is that is how fast these events are happening and how fast we need to face these preventive ideas of adaptation. So we believe that there's two main fields which are fundamental to work with them from every single government level, especially the ones that have the responsibility for the territory organization. That means just to have the responsibility to say what we put and where and how much in each portion of the territory, or just to put it another way, to adequate this to the risks that we have in our territories. So the intergovernment panel, which is, and also the AEMET, which is the meteorological agency from Spain, we have 4 main scenarios, which is the heat waves. We also have the droughts and the floods. We have 2 different floods in Sevilla because we are 7 meters over the sea level, so we are one of the most vulnerable seas when it comes to the rise of the sea level, despite that we are 90 kilometers away from the shore. But we are still basically in a place which is very vulnerable. We have many risks when it comes to the incidence of the waves and the sea. We are in a estuary, and the competency that is over Sevilla, it's the competency of the shores. And we also need forecasting tools when it comes to this climate scenarios that make us basically face the heat waves. Sevilla in this moment, for 1.5 years ago, from a European program, which is the Intelligent Cities in Neutrally Climate Neutral, we have obtained already our label. And in this framework in which these cities are working is basically to try to implement or carry out measures that mitigate the emission of greenhouse gases and to also contribute to the adaptation. Here you can see a bit the scenario of the situation from the years 1971 to the year 2000 on the average temperatures, also the rain. This is the classical diagram for these latitudes. Our summers are hotter, very dry. In winters are quite mild. And people that come to Sevilla in winter, they are surprised that we are at 0 degrees. But I mean, we only have 6 days with ice in Sevilla per year. It's not quite dramatic, but also in Sevilla in winter, it's very cold. This is something I want to clarify. 0 degrees in Sevilla, it's quite a topic to talk about. So we're going to focus in the tasks of adaptation, not talking about mitigation. Sevilla has 3,001,000 greenhouse tons of greenhouse emissions for the inhabitants that we have in the city. And also to face that mitigation is going to be around 1,300 million euros to be able to get to this goal of being carbon neutral in the year 2030. There's an adaptation strategy from the European Union. There's a national plan in Spain, and in Andalusia, our government has also another plan for Andalusia for the scenario 2030. We also have a climate change law. It's a regional one. It's quite demanding. And it demands to the town halls to have an action plan to fight against climate change when it comes to mitigation and adaptation. Sevilla also has a action plan for climate and sustainable energies since the year 2019 due to the agreement on the town halls of the European Union. And we have most of the 328 towns that I mentioned before in the network for the climate. We have a climate agreement by which the cities are committed to conduct a series of activities to be able to achieve that mitigation. But in my scenarios, I want to focus in the heat waves, in the appropriate architecture. This means the in-house management and also the proper urbanism. It's basically to adequate the different houses to make a urban habitats in a more comfortable way. We also have some new infrastructures of water storage. And when it comes to floods, we have infrastructures and also adequation of the systems. In Spain, we have a climate diversity, which is very important, and that's why we have biodiversity too. In the north of Spain, there are huge problems of health when it comes to heat over 26.5 degrees Celsius. But in Spain, this risk starts from the 40.5 degrees Celsius. So this makes that in the different areas, the people, we need to adapt to that climate. And there's a very nice project that I want to recommend to you to read it. It's basically this address, the Climate Adapt. We also participated in an active way on the projects in which we participate. So to culturally adapt the risks of the climate change. The problem, as I said, is that the changes are happening now in a faster way. And now in the concept of heat wave of the Spanish Agency of Meteorology, in which it says we have to have 3 consecutive days with the maximum daily temperatures with a 5% over the hottest days registered in July and August. This means that in Sevilla we have to be at 38 degrees Celsius. This is something that we reach in the 20 out of the 30 days of July and in 15 of the 31 days of July. That means that we are facing that situation in a quite frequent way. I'm going to put some examples now at the end. Well, the main advice to be able to face this heat wave, of course, is to reduce the physical activity outside, to look for fresh areas, to have routines in the first hours of the day to try to avoid the hottest times, to look for the shade, to drink more water, more liquids without a lot of sugar, to use clear clothing, white of cotton or linen, or try to avoid foods that may be difficult to digest, to close the windows during the day and try to open them during the night, and use sun protection. This is basically an agreement for everybody, but there's many people in Sevilla that don't understand this pretty well, or there's people that do include this in their daily life. There's other examples that Kel mentioned before. I'm going to be fast on this. We have the Water Cool, which is a project that tries to reduce the impact of the effects of heat waves in Sevilla and tries to reduce the impact of the heat by recirculating the water around 28 degrees Celsius. So basically, we achieve a drop of the temperature, for example, maybe in a street that has been completely adapted of 1 kilometer, it's 980 meters to be more exact. So this street has this water cool project, and we have a place for people to sit at with shade. There's a bus stop with shade too, and it's at the entrance of a school in which we want to reduce the temperature by 5 degrees. It seems that those 5 degrees is not much, but well, you have to remind that when you are at 45 degrees Celsius, when you walk through a 40 degrees Celsius area, you feel that it's really cool and that the temperature is amazing. This is an image on how the street is going to end up. This is a project that it's nearly finished. We are doing some last refurbishing. And another project is the Cartuja Knat. It has the same principle. It's based on references for many centuries ago, also when it comes to the recycling of fresh water. And this is a space in the Cartuja area, which is the Universal Exposition from the year 92. And we are retrieving spaces, adapting them so that they are comfortable spaces to gather meetings. Here we can have conferences, concerts. We organize events it's basically on the outside. It's not an enclosed area, and we organize things in July and August, and the temperature is really nice and it's much more cool. And when you leave the area, you realize how cool it is. And basically the water is the main character here to reduce the temperature. These are the areas that are communicated with also spaces that allow the airflow and also with water as the main element of cooling down the temperature. As I said before, we are facing climate change. Here you have some examples. This is from this summer. It's not last summer. You can see 48 degrees Celsius, 45 degrees Celsius, 51 degrees Celsius. Sorry, this is in July this year. So this is the scenario that we are facing in Sevilla every single summer and we are trying to mitigate this. Is specifically in the outside because the buildings are quite adapted, as I said at the beginning. But it will be very convenient to review, and as a reflection, we should review our hope in technology. We need to work more on cultural adaptation. We need to work more on geographical determinism and to monitor absolutely everything to ease in the decision making. Forced projects, like for example, when it comes to cooling down in a forced way of forced conditioning, does not mitigate heat if the building is not very well isolated and energetically managed. Also, shade, green or gray, is an effective solution facing the heat. When I talk about green, it's plants or trees, or gray, for example, it's canopies or human solutions to try to mitigate the sun rays that, as you know, in Sevilla, the sun rays are quite high. When it comes to floods, the walls are not always containing the floods or the rivers. And when it comes to droughts, there's not water available if we don't store it. And that's it. Thank you very much. And I open to the questions that you want to ask. And I believe now you're going to ask them to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Elio. As soon as you started talking about the WaterCool project, I had to go to lifewatercool.com and see some of these images because it's clear transforming the city in a way that can make life more enjoyable in general while you're also tackling heat. So that website has some amazing digital images that show what your project looks like, weaves its way through the streets. Very impressive. I know that Jane has a question for you, so I'll turn it back over to you, Jane, to ask that.
Thank you, Kale. Excellent presentation, Eladio. Thank you. And I too was very curious about both the cooling, the water cooling and the Cartua solutions. Those were amazing. Water is not as effective as cooling in Miami because of our humid climate, but it's still great to see. I have a question because both Sevilla and Miami are areas that receive many international visitors, and not all those visitors are from climates as hot as ours. In other words, they're not used to our heat. And wondering if you or your team in Sevilla have had any strategies to particularly make sure those visitors are aware or have the tools to protect themselves.
Well, of course, Sevilla, it's a city that has a GDP, which is pretty well conditioned by tourism. And of course, sustainable tourism is very important for us. And not only to have sustainable tourism, but give sustainability to tourism. It's a very hot topic for us, for our town hall today. And fortunately, summer tourism is growing actually, and in fact this last summer has been one of the summers with the most tourism because the tourists learn how to do tourism in our city. So tourists adapt to basically go to the streets on the first hours of the day and the last hours of the day. They learn that in the central hours or the central time of the day, it's better not to go out, because they know when they come to Sevilla, they have some kind of knowledge or education of the problems that we are facing when it comes to climate. And there's also many shops and establishments that do not recommend visits during certain hours, and they recommend, and this is something more endemic, there's a universal concept, has also many health references, which is the siesta. Siesta, it's a phenomenon that it's also introduced or presented that after eating, after having your meal between 2 or 3 in the afternoon in Spain, Spanish time, you basically take a nap, which is basically to rest for a bit or to sleep for a bit. Maybe it's 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. Camilo José Cela, the writer, preferred it to make it longer. He did this siesta with pajamas, but it's basically to rest for a while. And the tourists also learn to do the siesta, and there's even hotels that offer rooms to sleep siesta, to take a nap. So in those hours, which are more dramatic times, which is 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you do not see many tourists in Sevilla's streets. And also the traveling agencies also contribute to this because they give forehand that information to the tourists. And also the hotels give information. We give information through the web pages. We give recommendations for specifically when it comes to hydration, also the hats, and also the famous abanico, which is what we use in Spain, which is basically you need that air with that fan or that famous abanico. And also when it comes to water, you can reduce between 5 or 6 degrees, but moving the air with this famous abanico, you can nearly reduce the temperature by 7 degrees. There's many people that believe that they're just moving hot air, but if we are at 45 degrees, moving that air thanks to the fan or thanks to the abanico, you're able to reach that 39 degrees. And believe me, when you're at 45 degrees and you receive this breath of air at 39 degrees, is very much, it's very nice. Yeah.
That's very helpful. And it's amazing to hear how many are traditional, long tested adaptations for heat. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, for the question, and Eladio for the answer. Now I would like to invite the audience to enter their own questions for either one of you in the chat. There may be a way that some can ask. And while people are queuing up their questions here, we did already have a few in. So I'm going to start with you, Jane. I really like that Eladio spoke to the kind of more cultural adaptation actions, siestas, clothing even that people wear that reduce heat. And we need to recognize Miami and Miami-Dade County are very multicultural. Some of the most diverse places in the United States. So the question for you, Jane, is how do you mobilize such a diverse community to understand heat as a major problem? And how do you convince everyone from leadership to citizens that you need to take action? And are there any of your own, cultural adaptation measures that you see are effective?
So great question. So one, in designing our education and outreach campaign, our heat season campaign, we make sure everything that we create is available in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole. And we make sure we reach, you saw the zip codes with the highest rates of heat related. We're particularly targeting those areas with billboards, bus shelter ads, bus wraps, digital ads in gas stations, in grocery stores, actually in digital displays in medical offices, and with specific messages to different populations, specific ones to OBGYN offices about the dangers for pregnant people, to our clinics serving a lot of agricultural workers down south, the dangers for agricultural workers. And you need a different voice in each of those, right? You want the pregnant woman voice versus the often more male. They're very proud. You want them to be hearing from their peers. And even in our traditionally Black neighborhoods, we secured a spoken word artist to create a video PSA that is sort of in this rap, fun, but serious messaging about the risks, and then how to be resilient and get back out there, take breaks, drink water, but get back out there and enjoy the environment. We have not, I really love the idea of the siesta. That would be a big shift for our economy here in Miami to figure out how to make that work. But it is something to think about, particularly as a messaging maybe for our tourists. We do message to our summer camps that the time to get out is early morning, and then figure out your indoor activities for the afternoon. And the training of our community leaders is very helpful because they are leaders in their own neighborhoods. They have their respected voices in their own places to communicate risk, but also what you can do to protect themselves. So it's critical for us to reach people through so many different forms. I mentioned only some of them. We're also doing the social media and traditional media, but it's important to meet people where they are as much as you can.
Thank you, Jane. I really appreciate gender dimensions of this topic, and that Miami-Dade is really using art as a way to reach people. So a follow-on question for you is, I saw a presentation that the county is really using data to make sure that the most vulnerable people are the recipients of these kinds of initiatives that you're leading. Do you think that your messaging is really reaching the most vulnerable? Is there anything left to do to make sure that those most vulnerable people are reaping all the rewards from these programs?
That's an ongoing challenge to reach the most vulnerable. Some aren't comfortable with government entities, whether they're undocumented or so we do partner with community-based organizations and provide support for them to help with outreach, whether it's to outdoor workers or to doulas who support pregnant women in low-income communities. Those are different ways that we hope to reach our most vulnerable. But and trainings at our healthcare clinics that serve low-income populations. Those to ask the right questions. They certainly understand what to look out for in terms of heat exhaustion, but are they thinking about this person's diabetes or heart condition and what is their exposure to heat and more vulnerability? Or if I prescribe this drug for mental illness, I need to also make sure they're aware of how that makes them more sensitive to heat. Those kinds of things are very useful to make sure. That's why our heat action plan involves so many partners, because there's no way as a county we're going to reach all the people that we need to reach.
Thank you. Eladio, a question came in for you. So let's turn to you for a moment. The question is about Sevilla's relationship with the European Union. And could you explain a bit more on what the role the EU funding in helping your city, other cities around Spain adapt to climate change?
Well, the former relation in this context in which we are, it's specifically the climate mission, is this mission of intelligent cities and climate neutral, in which Sevilla is participating. And it's a singular relation. It's pretty disruptive when it comes to the previous relation of the European Union and the cities. It is pretty new, this concept of the missions, because there are different missions in different topics. This mission on the climate neutral cities has a common structure and is based that the participants basically they sign a contract, which is a commitment with the European Union, from which we are committed to certain specific actions which are quantified in terms of reduction of greenhouse emissions and also economic costs, in which we play a fundamental role, which is called a key to play. So basically here we have to work in this engine, the administrations, the town halls, the companies, the civil society, the academia, because the university and also research institutes are important, and also the media. These are the 5 axes in which Sevilla is compelled to work with in this program, which I insist there's more than 100 cities participating. The climate contract is signed by 34 cities now. It's a process which is pretty slow because it's very, very demanding, as I already said. And in this framework, we develop the relations with the European Union. It's this iterative process or review of this process is an annual process. We are in the first review that we must present in March, and from the European Union, which is in charge of this, ICLE is participating actively. Basically, they are evaluating constantly the different progress to conduct these activities. And then in the context of financing, there are different programs of grants. We are participating in one, which is very interesting. It's called UrbanU, which is looking for solutions to reduce the energy consumption in what we called the areas that have been built. Is the buildings and the different areas in which you can, like malls, for example, other lots or plots that have been built. Out of these 3 million tons that we have of greenhouse emissions, nearly 40% is due to the consumption in this constructed plot of lands. And most of it is basically dedicated to refrigerate the spaces in summer in these 3 months and a half in which the air conditionings are working to try to adapt the homes and the offices. So financing is not enough. It's clearly inefficient. It's not enough. And we are really willing that the reinforcements of the European Union are on the challenge that we are facing, and also with the Draghi report recently published to achieve these goals. So from the town halls, we are the poor administrations in Spain, we are also claiming constantly at an individual level and also through the Spanish network of cities for climate, that from Europe they establish some clear financing for these actions through a gateway, because we are working a lot in what it is called the new paradigms of financing. This means new formulas for financing that allow the town halls to face the challenges. But deep down, it's just basically to increase their level of debt. And following that way is going to be very difficult that the local entities, at least in Spain, and this is a personal opinion, invest in this fight against climate change.
Eladia, thank you so much. You really show that tackling heat is a matter of financing, infrastructure, public relations. It can feel very big in scale. So we're here in our 5 minutes of our time together. Before I close out, I would like to pose one question to each of you, very quickly, to say what is a very achievable action that you feel anybody can do, maybe on low budget, they're able to make, sort of progress, even in the next year. So some achievable action briefly from each of your cities. Either one of you jump in to answer that first.
Well, I think the thing that I did when I first started was education and to make sure that people were aware. And any ICLEI, any city has a platform to make sure people understand that heat is the #1 climate-related killer, and that these risks are serious, and that but they're highly preventable deaths and illnesses, and there are things people can do. And then also include in that education, don't stop at just what people can do to take care of themselves as individuals, their families, their community, but what needs to be done, like what Eladia was sharing, at the urban realm, so that people start to understand and support those higher cost, longer term investments that are going to be needed to make our cities thermally comfortable and safe. And so that would be education, resources would be the first thing, I would say.
Wonderful. Thank you. A lot in 30 seconds, what will the city do?
Okay, in 30 seconds is shade everywhere. Sevilla needs shade everywhere. If we can, green, and where it's not possible, gray shade. It's an investment. It's a quite affordable investment, and it can have a huge good impact in the refreshing the plots. And that's why planting trees and having shaded structures that are able to mitigate up to 12 degrees Celsius the temperature and improve our climate comfort.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to you. From Sevilla to Miami to New York, we're hearing about these seasons of heat. But you all have given us a whole range of solutions. We heard about cool ordinances, air conditioning and low-income units, infrastructure of kinds that can weave water and cooling throughout a city, beautifying it, drawing inspiration from art and culture. And so I think we've got this whole toolbox we can pull from. So I'll give the audience here today, many of you all are working in communities. You have organizations like UNDP and like ICLEI, and many local partners are here for you to implement various solutions and to uncover ones that work for your community. So I really appreciate the time with Jane, Eladia, Diana, and the full team. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll hope to keep the conversation going again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Muchas gracias.